Let me see your papers right now. I don't care what you claim to be. Show me your identification and proof of citizenship." The voice didn't just break the silence of the pharmacy. It shattered it. It was a voice that didn't ask questions. It gave orders. It was the voice of a man who had never been told no in his entire life. Officer Blake Morrison stood in the aisle between the vitamins and the first aid supplies. He was imposing, over 6 feet tall, with a buzz cut and a uniform that was a little too tight around the biceps. His hand rested casually, yet threateningly, near his holster. His badge, number 47209, caught the glare of the fluorescent lights above. He looked like he owned the place. He looked like he owned her. "Papers," he repeated, slower this time, savoring the word. "A complaint was filed. I'm required to investigate. Now, you can cooperate and show me your ID, or we can do this the hard way." Dr. Vanessa Lynn Mitchell froze. The bottle of lisinopril she was holding for Mr. Patterson, her 80-year-old regular patient, hovered in mid-air. The hum of the pharmacy refrigerator seemed to stop. The air conditioning vents, usually a comforting white noise against the brutal Phoenix heat, went silent. Vanessa slowly set the bottle down. She felt the blood draining from her face, not from fear, but from a sudden, cold realization. She felt the eyes of everyone in the store: the young mother in the greeting card aisle, the construction worker buying Gatorade, the terrified teenage cashier named Sarah, drilling into her back. She turned slowly. She adjusted her white coat. She made sure her name tag was visible: Dr. Vanessa Mitchell, PharmD. "Officer," she said, her voice steady, though her stomach was twisting into knots. "I am an American citizen. I was born in Houston, Texas. I am the pharmacist on duty. This is harassment." Morrison let out a short, dry laugh. It was a sound devoid of humor. "Texas," he sneered. "That's what they all say. If you're from Texas, you'll have a license. Show it to me. Prove you belong here." What Officer Blake Morrison did next would not only cost the city of Phoenix $15.9 million, but it would ignite a firestorm that would burn through the Phoenix Police Department and change federal law enforcement training forever. He reached for his handcuffs. "Comment where you're listening from. Subscribe to Beat Stories for the truth they don't want you to hear." But here is what Officer Morrison didn't know. It was the one detail that would eventually destroy him. He looked at Vanessa and saw a stereotype. He saw a quota. He saw an easy target. He didn't know he was looking at a woman whose family roots in this country were deeper than his own. Vanessa wasn't just a pharmacist. She was the descendant of survivors. Her great-grandparents had been sharecroppers in East Texas, people who had tilled soil they weren't allowed to own until they finally scraped together enough to buy their own plot in the 1920s. Her grandfather had marched in Selma. Her father was a history teacher who made her memorize the Bill of Rights before she was allowed to get her learner's permit. Growing up in the 3rd Ward of Houston, Vanessa had learned the hard way that the world wasn't fair. She remembered the nights her mother spent counting tips on the kitchen table to pay for Vanessa's textbooks. She remembered the guidance counselor who told her that pharmacy school was too ambitious and suggested she look into being a nursing assistant instead. She remembered the hunger, not just the physical hunger of skipping meals to pay tuition, but the hunger to prove them wrong. She had worked double shifts at a diner while taking organic chemistry. She had studied by candlelight when the power got cut off. She had graduated at the top of her class from Texas Southern University, a historically black college that taught her not just medicine, but dignity. She carried 6 figures of student loan debt. She drove a 10-year-old car. She had moved to Phoenix 8 years ago for this job at Hayes Pharmacy, leaving her family behind to serve a community that didn't always welcome her. She had endured patients who refused to look her in the eye. She had endured being followed by security guards in the mall. But she had a secret weapon, a hidden skill that Officer Morrison couldn't see. During her undergrad years, Vanessa had taken electives in constitutional law. She had become obsessed with the Fourth Amendment. She knew Terry v. Ohio. She knew Brown v. Texas. She knew exactly where the line was drawn between a lawful order and an illegal demand. Morrison thought he was arresting a nobody. He didn't know he was arresting a walking, talking legal library, and that was his first mistake. The injustice didn't start when the handcuffs clicked. It started at exactly 3:07 p.m. on a Wednesday. Outside, Phoenix was baking under a relentless sun. The bank thermometer across the street read 104 degrees Fahrenheit. Heat waves shimmered off the asphalt, distorting the air. Inside Hayes Pharmacy, it was cool and quiet. A sanctuary. Vanessa was in the middle of a consultation. Mr. Patterson, a sweet man with trembling hands and a walker, was confused about his heart medication. "Now, Mr. Patterson," Vanessa said, her voice gentle, leaning over the counter. "You have to take this with food. If you take it on an empty stomach, you'll get dizzy again." "Thank you, Dr. Mitchell," the old man said, smiling. "You always look out for me." That was when the bell above the door didn't just jingle, it was shoved open. Officer Morrison strode in, bringing a wave of hot air and aggression with him. Behind him trailed Officer Rachel Brennan. She was younger, maybe late 20s, with a look of perpetual uncertainty on her face. She scanned the pharmacy nervously, her hand resting on her belt, clearly uncomfortable with whatever was about to happen. Morrison didn't wait in line. He didn't acknowledge the "please wait here" sign. He marched straight to the pharmacy counter, his boots heavy on the linoleum floor. He physically pushed past a woman at the pickup window. He locked eyes with Vanessa. "You, step out here." Vanessa blinked. "I'm with a patient, officer. I can help you in a moment." "You're done," Morrison barked. He reached over and unlatched the swing gate that separated the sterile pharmacy area from the public. The metallic clack echoed like a gunshot in the quiet store. "We got a call. Suspicious female, black hair, medium build, possibly using a stolen identity to access controlled substances. Matches your description." "My description?" Vanessa asked, incredulous. She gestured to the wall behind her, where her licenses and diplomas were framed. "I am the pharmacist. I have worked here for 8 years. You are interrupting a medical consultation with a geriatric patient." "I don't care if you're the Surgeon General," Morrison said, stepping into her personal workspace. He was close now. Too close. She could smell stale coffee and the metallic scent of old sweat on his uniform. "Let me see your papers right now." Papers. The word hung in the air, heavy and ugly. It wasn't ID, it wasn't license, it was papers. It was a word that evoked checkpoints. It evoked history books about regimes that demanded proof of humanity from certain groups of people. "Papers," Vanessa repeated, her voice dropping, becoming steel. "Officer, this isn't 1950s Alabama. This isn't apartheid South Africa. This is the United States of America, and the Fourth Amendment protects me from unreasonable seizures. I need to see your identification and documentation proving you're authorized to work in this country," Morrison said, his voice rising. He wanted a scene. He wanted her to break. "Last chance." "I am not providing my ID because you have no reasonable suspicion that I have committed a crime," Vanessa said, quoting the law verbatim. "Being black in a pharmacy is not a crime. Wearing a white coat is not a crime." "That's obstruction," Morrison said. "You're refusing a lawful order." "It is not a lawful order," Vanessa countered. Mr. Patterson, shaking on his walker, tried to turn around. "Now see here, young man, this is Dr. Mitchell. She's been my pharmacist for—" "Back off, old man," Morrison screamed, not even looking at him. He shoved the walker aside. Mr. Patterson stumbled, barely catching himself on the counter. That was it. Vanessa moved to help her patient, but Morrison lunged. He grabbed her arm, his fingers digging into her bicep hard enough to bruise. He spun her around. He slammed her against the pharmacy counter, her face pressing into the cold particle board, right next to the pill-counting tray. "You are under arrest," Morrison grunted. He yanked her wrists behind her back. "You're hurting me," Vanessa gasped. "Stop resisting," Morrison yelled. For the benefit of the cameras he knew were there, even though she wasn't moving. The handcuffs clicked. Click, click, click. Cold steel biting into her skin. "This is racial profiling," Vanessa said, her voice muffled against the counter. "My name is Dr. Vanessa Lynn Mitchell. This is a violation of my civil rights. This is what happens when Black Americans are treated as suspicious simply for existing in their own country." Morrison leaned down, his lips close to her ear. "You can tell it to the judge. Right now you're just another caller, and I don't care what degree you think you have." Officer Brennan stood by the greeting cards. She watched Morrison manhandle a woman in a professional lab coat. She watched the terrified customers. She saw Vanessa's purse sitting open on the back counter, a Texas driver's license clearly visible in the wallet slot. Brennan took a step forward. She opened her mouth. She wanted to say, "Blake, stop. She's legitimate. Look at the license." But she looked at Morrison's face, red, angry, fueled by adrenaline and power. She thought about her own career. She thought about the blue wall of silence. She closed her mouth. She looked down at her boots. And in that moment of silence, she became just as guilty as he was. Comment: silence is violence if you agree that watching injustice happen and doing nothing is a crime in itself. As Morrison marched Vanessa out of the store, parading her past the people she served every day, Vanessa felt a burning humiliation. The young cashier, Sarah, was crying behind the register. Mr. Patterson was trembling, but beneath the shame, something hotter was forging. A cold, calculating rage. As she passed the entrance, Vanessa looked up. She saw the CCTV camera blinking red. She looked down at Morrison's chest. The green light on his body camera was solid. Recording. Record everything, she thought. You have no idea what you just started. The heat hit her like a physical blow as they stepped outside. 104 degrees. Morrison shoved her into the back of the patrol car. The seats were hard plastic. The air conditioning in the back was non-existent. It was a cage, an oven. Sweat began to pour down her face, soaking her white lab coat. Her glasses fogged up. She sat there, hands numb from the tight cuffs, struggling to breathe in the stifle air. Morrison got in the front seat. He turned the AC vents toward himself and blasted the cold air. He picked up his radio. 1 female in custody, obstruction, failure to ID, possible 10-15 status. He laughed. He actually laughed. He turned to Brennan. Did you hear her? Citing the Fourth Amendment? I know my rights. God, I hate these jailhouse lawyers. Probably printed that degree off the internet. She seemed to know the law, Blake, Brennan said, her voice quiet. Doesn't mean she's legal, Morrison scoffed, putting the car in gear. Probably an affirmative action hire. They let anyone in these days. We'll sort it out downtown. Let her sweat a bit. Let her sweat. Vanessa closed her eyes. She focused on her breathing. Inhale. Exhale. She visualized the text of the Constitution. She visualized her grandfather's face. I will not break, she told herself. I will not give him the satisfaction of seeing me cry. But here's the mini cliffhanger. Vanessa thought the nightmare would end at the station. She had false hope. She thought a supervisor would see the mistake. She was wrong. At the Central City Precinct, the booking officer, Sergeant Gonzalez, looked at the paperwork. He looked at Vanessa, still in her lab coat, though it was now wrinkled and damp with sweat. You arrested a pharmacist? Gonzalez asked, raising an eyebrow. From Hayes? My mom gets her blood pressure meds there. Failure to identify. Obstruction. Suspicion of identity theft, Morrison recited, leaning on the desk, looking bored. "I have my Texas driver's license in my purse," Vanessa said calmly from the bench. "Officer Brennan saw it. Officer Morrison refused to look at it." Gonzalez looked at Morrison. "Blake, is that true?" Morrison shrugged. "She refused a direct order. I'm not playing games with these people. Book her." "If we book her and she's legit, it's a headache, Blake," Gonzalez warned. "Book her," Morrison insisted, his eyes hardening. "If we let her go now without a charge, it's a false arrest suit waiting to happen. Charge her with obstruction. Let the DA drop it later. We need to cover our ass." That was the moment the conspiracy revealed itself. It wasn't just one bad cop. It was a system designed to protect the bad cop. Gonzalez sighed. He didn't argue. He didn't check her ID. He typed into the computer. Vanessa was processed. They took her fingerprints. The same hands that compounded life-saving medications were pressed into black ink like a common criminal. They took her mugshot, her hair frizzy from the heat, her eyes tired but defiant. They put her in a holding cell. She spent 7 hours there, 7 hours on a concrete bench. The cell smelled of urine and bleach. In the corner, a woman was coming down from meth, screaming at demons only she could see. Vanessa sat with her knees pulled to her chest, trying to make herself small, trying to preserve a shred of her dignity. 7 hours to think. 7 hours to realize that Morrison didn't do this because he made a mistake. He did this because he enjoyed it. Mini cliffhanger. What Vanessa found out next would turn this from a personal grievance into a national scandal. She was released at 11 p.m. Her car had been towed. She had to take an Uber home. She didn't sleep. She went straight to her computer. She remembered his badge number. 4729. She started digging. She searched public records. She searched court dockets. She found a community forum for Phoenix residents. And what she found made her blood run cold. This wasn't an isolated incident. Officer Blake Morrison had been on the force for 7 years. In those 7 years, there were 5 formal civilian complaints against him. He stopped me for walking while brown. He demanded my papers while I was watering my lawn. He arrested my son for loitering at the bus stop. All 5 complaints had been dismissed by internal affairs. Unfounded. Exonerated. Within policy. But Vanessa dug deeper. She found the stats. Morrison was a star in the department. He was praised for his proactive policing. He had high numbers of field interrogations. He was getting promoted, earning overtime, and receiving commendations for the very behavior that was terrorizing the community. The exploitation was systemic. The city was rewarding him for violating rights. He targeted people who couldn't fight back, people who couldn't afford lawyers, people who would plead guilty to disorderly conduct just to get out of jail and go back to their hourly jobs. He had built a career on the backs of the vulnerable. He was a predator with a badge. But he had never hunted a doctor of pharmacy with a minor in constitutional law before. 5 days later, Vanessa walked into the sleek, glass-walled office of the ACLU of Arizona. She didn't look like a victim. She wore a tailored navy suit. She carried a binder thick with printouts. She met with David Ramos, a veteran civil rights attorney who looked like he hadn't slept in a decade. He listened to her story. He looked at the binder. "They dropped the charges this morning," Ramos told her, sliding a letter across the desk. "The DA knows it's a loser case. They want you to go away. The city attorney called me 10 minutes ago. They're offering $25,000 to settle right now." $25,000. "They want me to sign an NDA?" Vanessa asked. "Of course," Ramos said. "No admission of guilt. You take the money, you sign a paper saying it was a misunderstanding, and you never talk about it again." It was a lot of money to some people. It could pay off a chunk of her student loans. It was the easy way out. Most people take it, Vanessa, Ramos said gently. A federal lawsuit. It takes years. They will drag you through the mud. They will dig up your old yearbooks. They will investigate your ex-boyfriends. They will try to paint you as an angry black woman who hates police. They will put your entire life on trial. Vanessa stood up and walked to the window. She looked out at the city that had disrespected her. She thought about Mr. Patterson. She thought about the meth addict in the cell who had nobody to fight for her. She thought about her grandfather, who had scars on his back from a sheriff in 1960. I don't want their money, Vanessa said, turning back. Her eyes were dry. Her voice was ice. I want his badge. I want his pension. And I want a jury to see what he did. This is the decision that will cost you everything, Ramos warned. File the suit, Vanessa said. Dr. Vanessa Mitchell versus City of Phoenix, Officer Blake Morrison, and Officer Rachel Brennan. The backlash was immediate, brutal, and orchestrated. As soon as the lawsuit was filed, the police union went on the offensive. Their spokesperson, a man with a thick neck and a louder voice, appeared on the evening news. Officer Morrison is a decorated veteran who was responding to a credible threat, the spokesperson said, looking grave. He reasonably believed the suspect was non-compliant. It is a tragedy that Dr. Mitchell chose to escalate the situation instead of simply cooperating. If you have nothing to hide, just show the ID. Escalate. The word hung in the air like poison. Social media turned into a battlefield. Blue Lives Matter AZ tweeted, "Another ungrateful person looking for a payday. Respect the badge." Facebook comments were worse. She probably stole the drugs. We don't know the full story. Why didn't she just comply? She caused this herself. Vanessa was placed on administrative leave by the pharmacy corporate office, pending the investigation. She sat at home, watching her reputation be shredded. Her neighbors stopped waving. A truck drove by her house with a "We support our police" flag. She felt isolated. She felt small. The city's lawyers were ruthless. They filed motion after motion to dismiss. They cited qualified immunity, the legal doctrine that shields government officials from liability unless they violate clearly established rights. They argued Morrison made an honest mistake. They argued that a reasonable officer could have believed Vanessa was a threat. They tried to bury her in paperwork. They delayed discovery. They tried to break her bank account and her spirit. But they forgot one thing. They forgot about the receipts. Beat Stories listeners, this is the part where the tables turn. This is the part where you need to share this stream. Because the truth doesn't care about your PR spin. 21 months after the arrest. The discovery phase. Ramos finally got the court order from Judge Sterling, a no-nonsense woman who was tired of the city's stalling. "Turn over the footage," Judge Sterling ordered. "All of it. Unredacted now." They received a hard drive. Document 1, Morrison's body camera, full audio and video. Document 2, Brennan's body camera, the angle Morrison didn't see. Document 3, Hayes Pharmacy CCTV, 3 angles, entrance, register, and overhead pharmacy counter. Ramos and Vanessa sat in his office, watching the footage. And then they saw it. The smoking gun. The trial took place in the United States District Court for the District of Arizona. The courtroom was packed. Law students, activists, off-duty cops, and reporters filled every bench. Ramos didn't deliver a shouting opening statement. He was quiet. Deadly quiet. "We are going to watch a robbery," he told the jury. "Not a robbery of money, but a robbery of dignity, a robbery of rights." He set up a massive screen facing the jury. He didn't just play one video, he played them all. Synced, split screen. On the left, Morrison's POV. On the right, the overhead CCTV. The jury watched as Morrison stormed in, The timestamp read 3:07:12 p.m. They heard the aggression. They saw Vanessa, calm, professional, helping an elderly man. They heard the demand. Papers. Twiff. Then Ramos played Brennan's body camera. This was the moment the defense team knew they had lost. On the screen, while Morrison was wrestling Vanessa into handcuffs, Brennan's camera captured her turning away. It captured her finding Vanessa's purse on the counter. It captured her opening the wallet. The jury saw the Texas driver's license clearly. They saw Brennan look at it. They saw her look at Morrison's back. And then, the audio, enhanced by experts, picked up her whisper. "We didn't have reasonable suspicion. Shit." She put the license back. She said nothing. The courtroom gasped, a collective intake of breath that sucked the air out of the room. Then came the testimony. Vanessa took the stand. She wore her white coat. She wanted the jury to see the professional, not the mugshot. "Dr. Mitchell," Ramos asked, "why didn't you just show him your ID? You had it. It would have been easier." Vanessa looked at the jury. She looked at Morrison, who was sitting at the defense table, his face pale, his arrogance gone. "Because I have 3 pharmacy degrees hanging on my wall," Vanessa said, her voice trembling with suppressed emotion. "I am a healthcare provider, but the moment Officer Morrison saw me, a black woman, he assumed I was there illegally. If I show my papers simply because he demands them, without cause, I am validating his belief that I am less than a citizen. I am accepting that my rights are conditional on his mood." She paused, wiping a tear. "My grandfather was beaten for trying to vote. He made me promise that I would never, ever let anyone make me feel like a guest in my own country. I didn't show my ID because the Fourth Amendment says I don't have to, and if I don't use that right, I lose it." 3 jurors were openly weeping. The court reporter stopped typing to wipe her eyes. Then came the confrontation. Morrison took the stand. He tried to rely on his old tricks. "Officer safety," he said. "Split-second decision." "High crime area." Ramos approached him like a shark circling prey. "Officer Morrison, you claimed in your report that you had an anonymous tip," Ramos said. "We traced that call. It came from a payphone 3 blocks away. A payphone that has been out of order for 2 years. There was no call, was there?" Mini cliffhanger. The silence that followed lasted an eternity. I received a dispatch," Morrison stammered, sweat beading on his forehead. "No." Ramos slammed a document onto the railing. "Dispatch logs show no call until 3:24 p.m., after you had already arrested her. You called it in yourself. You went in there because you saw a black woman in a position of authority, and you wanted to put her in her place. Isn't that right?" "I was doing my job," Morrison shouted, his composure shattering. "These people, they think they can do whatever they want. They disrespect the badge." "These people?" Ramos asked softly. "You mean American citizens?" Morrison's lawyer put his head in his hands. It was over. The jury deliberated for 3 days. The city held its breath. Would the system protect its own again? Would qualified immunity save him? When they returned, the courtroom was standing room only. "We the jury," the foreperson read, her voice shaking, "find in favor of the plaintiff, Dr. Vanessa Lynn Mitchell, guilty on all counts, unlawful seizure, false arrest, excessive force, violation of the Fourth Amendment." Then came the numbers. Compensatory damages, $8.4 million. Punitive damages, $7.5 million. Total, $15.9 million. The largest civil rights verdict in Arizona history. The courtroom erupted. Cheers mixed with sobs. Vanessa closed her eyes, letting the sound wash over her. Morrison stared straight ahead, realizing that his life as he knew it was over. But the story didn't end with the gavel. This wasn't just about money. This was about the bigger picture. The verdict sent a shockwave through the country. The blue wall didn't just crack, it shattered. Within hours of the verdict, under immense public pressure, the Phoenix Police Department fired Blake Morrison. He didn't just lose his job, he lost his pension. He became a pariah, unemployable in law enforcement anywhere in the country. Officer Brennan was suspended for 2 months and permanently reassigned to desk duty, a living warning to other officers that silence is complicity. But the real change was systemic. The Department of Justice stepped in. They mandated a consent decree for the Phoenix PD. They implemented mandatory, rigorous Fourth Amendment training, using Vanessa's arrest video as the primary teaching tool. They created a new policy, the Mitchell Rule. No ID demands without articulable, recorded reasonable suspicion. Vanessa didn't buy a mansion. She used her settlement to establish the Fourth Amendment Defense Fund. She hired lawyers to represent the other people Morrison had targeted. She became a national speaker. She testified before Congress. "The Constitution is just a piece of paper," she told the Senate Judiciary Committee. "It has no power unless we are willing to stand up and enforce it. Being black doesn't mean forfeiting those rights. And wearing a badge doesn't mean you are the law. It means you serve the law." So let me ask you, have you ever been in a situation where authority demanded you make yourself small? Have you ever been told to just cooperate when you knew you were right? Have you ever swallowed your dignity just to survive an interaction with someone in power? Drop your story in the comments. We read every single one. Share this story. Not the sanitized version, the real version. The version where a black pharmacist from Texas stood up to a bully with a badge and won. Because the moral of the story is this. Sometimes the most important word you can say to power is simply no. Standing up for your rights isn't convenient, it isn't cheap, it isn't safe, but it is necessary. One person's courage can create systemic change. Stay just. Stay loud, stay free, subscribe to Beat Stories.